Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in bountiful Bakersfield, California. This is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer, Michael. And today we're so excited to have back on the show Renee Starr. She's a multi-award winning author, mystic witch, magical herbalist, and artist. And she is the author of You're a Woman, You Are Divine, and also just a fabulous human being. She has a shop. I think she opened it maybe about a year or so ago called Omens and Alchemy, but we'll talk about that in the show a little, and has a physical presence in Wisconsin. But today she's coming on the show to talk about a really fabulous topic, Hamsa magic. And I'm really, really thrilled to be ending our March with this topic. But before we get started, Michael has a few announcements.
Hi everybody, welcome back to our show. Yes, we will be on hiatus through April and back in May. And when we come back in May, we'll be moving to Saturdays, maybe temporarily, maybe not. We just got a notice from the city they're going to be doing some construction in front of our place. So jackhammers and heavy equipment, not very conducive to doing a nice civilized show. So we'll be doing Saturdays when they're not working. And you can get all the information on upcoming shows on our website, sixthsensesociety.com, SAXTH, all there spelled out. While you're there, buy us a coffee on Ko-Fi. Helps us cover a little bit of our production cost. We do appreciate that. And our book, Tarot Alchemy, A Kabbalah-Inspired Approach to Reading the Cards, is now available on Amazon. Search under books. And by the way, Renee's shop is the exclusive. She's the only shop in the world carrying our book at the moment. So we're very happy about that and very excited. We love her. So it's really nice that that's the case. So all kinds of stuff going on. I don't want to take up much time because there's just so much to cover today. And this is such a great topic. So I'm going to kick it back to both of you. So take it away, Krista and Renee.
Great. Thank you, Michael. But I did want to mention we are going to have a book signing here in Bakersfield at the Enchanted Cottage, April 19th, which is a Saturday from 2 to 5 p.m. And we'll announce it, obviously, before the time gets here. But I wanted to let people know ahead of time. So thank you, Renee, for coming on the show again.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. It's always fun to be here with you.
Oh, good. And I love this topic. It's just a fantastic topic. And I think it might be good to, maybe start with what is the Hamsa, because we assume everybody knows what it is, but perhaps that's not true.
That is not true. A lot of people they've seen it, but they don't know what it is. And also, just a disclaimer, I have a throat lozenge in, so I'm just don't want anyone to be disturbed by that. It's in my mouth. But the Hamsa is a very ancient symbol and amulet for protection. It has two names, Hamsa or Hamsa, and the Ha is with a KH. It comes from Islamic and Judaic culture, and it means 5. So the word itself in Islam and Hebrew means 5. It has about 4 associations: the hand of Miriam, the hand of Fatima, the hand of Mary, and the hand of Isis. Miriam was the sister of Moses in Hebrew, in the Judaic Torah, the books of Moses. And the hand of Fatima was the daughter of the prophet Muhammad and his first wife, Khadijah. And the hand of Mary, of course, from Catholicism, and the hand of Isis from ancient Egypt. It's so old that there's arguments over where its actual origin comes from. Some say that it came from ancient Egypt, but its earliest in ancient Egypt as a 3-fingered hand-shaped amulet that was known as the monopate. I'm sorry, nope, not the mono. That's coming up later. A 3-finger shaped amulet, and it represented Isis, Osiris, and Horus, and it's this.
And you should describe what you're doing. She's holding up her thumb and your...
Oh, 2 fingers, index finger, middle finger, and thumb.
Right.
The other 2 fingers are folded. And this is called, in ancient Egypt, it was an amulet that represented Isis, Osiris, and Horus, and was used to represent their trinity, used as a protection to call upon them. So the earliest Hamsas that we find are in Mesopotamia, and it predates ancient Egypt, and we don't know if if it originated in Mesopotamia, Sumeria, and they didn't get it from anywhere else, but it does have relationship to the moon goddess Tunit.
Hmm.
And so she also has relationship to Isis. And so we find a little bit of an origin story there. And then we see this symbol of the middle finger, the first finger, and the thumb. We see that appropriated in Catholicism as the sacerdotal benediction.
Hmm.
You see the pictures of Jesus holding his hand up that way and offering that as a blessing. That is an ancient symbol that was appropriated, and it comes from the Hamsa. It comes from the origin of the Hamsa. In Egypt, there was another amulet that was used called the Monopantea, and it's also called the Hand of the All Goddess.
Hmm.
And the Monopantea in Renaissance medieval depiction has a billion symbols on it. It has all 12 zodiac symbols as animals or as people. It has scarabs. It just like this magnet for all these symbols, but it is the hand, the full hand shown, palm front, and then all of these little symbols in relief around it, usually made of clay or stone. The uh, two fingers and the thumb was a symbol that was used in ancient Egypt. I'm sorry, two fingers, the index finger. There's so many hands, I have to get them all straight. There's the index finger and the middle finger were two fingers amulets used in ancient Egypt that were placed at the incision on the left where they made the incision to remove the entrails.
Oh.
And this is also an origin of the Hamsa because it was used to magically heal the incision and protect the body.
Wow.
So we see the hand throughout history being used as this protection. Always the hand is a protection. Even milagros, in Spanish, Hispanic culture, Latin culture, have the hand symbol as a very powerful symbol of protection. In Italy, we see the horned fingers, the pinky and the first finger, and the other fingers clasped in the middle. So we see the hand being used again and again in every culture. It all comes from this origin in Mesopotamia, Sumeria, this ancient origin of hand as protection.
It sounds like it has a very feminine origin.
Extraordinarily. It is by the Catholic religion called the hand of God, which is a misappropriation of it. It is the hand of the goddess and the eye of God. And so the eye seeks out the evil and the hand protects and removes it.
Wow.
So the hand of the goddess is the Shekhinah, the goddess, the divine feminine aspect of God as a whole. And then we have the eye of God, hand of goddess, eye of God, they work together. A Hamsa without the eye is impotent, cannot see where the evil is to instruct the goddess where to remove it.
So I was wondering when I was, you're talking about the hand and also before the show, if there's some connection to palmistry. Since it's, at least Indian palmistry is a study. It's a deep study too. It's not simply fortune telling, and also it does seem like it has a connection to mudras, because mudras are also very powerful, and there's some you can't even learn without permission from teachers. Even to this day, I wanted to get just a copy of a book, Kempo Rinpoche doing the mudras, my teacher, and they only let me get it because I'd been a student. And I was kind of surprised. I didn't, and they luckily still remembered. I was long ago that I was a student there, but so there, I thought, wow, they're still trying, and it leaks out, I guess, some of the secret mudras. But I thought, well, it's kind of like a mudra too, and
it is, because it's the symbol of the hand saying stop.
Yeah.
No, this is a boundary. You cannot cross it. Now, the Hamsa has two directions. Hand up, fingers up is protection. Hand down, fingers down is asking the earth you're drawing up from the earth blessings good fortune, health, wellness, abundance.
Mm-hmm.
So the earth has all those things, and we draw it up through the hand. You'll also see on Buddhist sculptures of the Buddha where his hand is facing down and one is facing up.
Yeah, that's right.
So that is the Hamsa in action. One hand receiving blessings from the earth, the other hand receiving blessings from above.
Oh,
Where
that's
do
true.
we get protection from? Above, the divine.
Right. I was going to say something about the hand again. Oh, the number 5. Now, does that symbolize something particular?
Thank you. That was next on my list.
Okay.
The number 5 is extraordinarily powerful with the Hamsa. 5 in Hebrew and in Arabic is the word Hamsa or Hamsa. In Hebrew, it represents the 5 books of the Torah. It symbolizes the 5th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, He, which is also part of God's holy name. In Islam, for the Sunnis, it represents the 5 pillars of Islam. For the Shiites in Islam, it represents the 5 people of the cloak. It's also the 5th day of the week, which is Venus and the goddess.
Mm-hmm.
And the number 5 in numerology is an interesting number because usually odd numbers are predominantly considered masculine, but this is a number that carries both. It's almost like an androgyny for the number 5. And when I look at that, and when I look at what the Hamsa is, the hand of the goddess, the eye of God, it makes sense that it would have that balance. So the number 5 has that equilibrium. And this opens up and I have lots more about the numerology, but this equilibrium idea of the number 5 opens up what is protection. Protection is not the removal of evil. It is the balance of good and evil. It is equilibrium, homeostasis, balance.
It's kind of like that topic of integration in Jungian psychology. The integrated person has the both the good and the bad, I guess, sort of blend in its own way. I don't know if there's anyone that is an integrated person yet, but the theory is very good.
Yes, it is. And it's also an attainment. It's something to achieve. So there's a misunderstanding today in trend witchcraft. And that is protection is I can practice baneful magic against someone to protect myself, or I will protect myself and that's it. I will create a shield and that's it. There's an awful lot more to protection than that. There's the act of protecting yourself from the evil, from the negative, and adding in the good, balancing that with the good. And there is also, and I don't practice baneful magic, I don't curse or hex, but those that do not balance that with blessing. And that's extraordinarily important. You cannot, in my humble opinion, simply practice a curse or a hex and expect to walk away from that okay.
Right.
You know, you're creating a ripple effect of imbalance in the world and for yourself, for your life. So, you know, if that's a choice to practice baneful magic, practice it with balance.
I think that in Z Budapest, one of her books, she talks about in order to heal, you have to understand what hexing is. So she does at least imply that the two go together. And I don't know how she personally uses it, but I do remember that stuck with me, kind of like that they go together, the healing and the hexing.
Yes, love and fear, love and hate, light and dark. You know, you can't, this world is duality. And so you can't escape that. If you're going to practice magic and work with an amulet, you have to acknowledge the duality of the realm you're practicing it in. If we were elevated into spirit form, there wouldn't be any reason for amulet work, but we would see the whole. But we don't have that here. We have everything very separated in duality, and we're part of, you know, our life here is part of separation. So it's hard for people to recognize that you have to do both. Also, there's bitterness that comes with baneful magic, and anger and hurt. And some people they can't find that mercy or blessing within them. And that's a difficult thing. It's interesting because this leads us to the Hamsa in relationship to the tree of life, which I know will be an interesting topic for you because you and Michael are very interested in that. So the number 5, as you know, and for everyone else, is the 5th Sephira, Gibora. And this is about justice, and we could even draw it back to balance and the goddess Ma'at, the goddess Sophia, the god of wisdom, balance, and even the Shekhinah. She has a ribbon through all the Sephirot. And it's also about limitations and setting boundaries. So the number 5 sets boundaries through this Sephiro, and it sits beneath Bina and above Hod. And in that way, what we have is, and it's also a cross opposite of Chesed. So we have above the Hamsa, the number 5, above the essence of it is Bina, understanding, splendor, radiance. This is protection. That is the essence of protection. Fill me with light, dispel darkness, radiance, splendor, understanding. That's where balance comes in.
The other thing about the 5, which, and again, it depends on what school of thought you are in, but Deanne Fortune and Aleister Crowley is it's connected to the planet Mars, number 5. And one of the things I read recently was this beautiful connection of Venus and Mars, because I'm trying to also study Mars because I think it gets very demonized and I don't quite understand why. And so this woman who is an astrologer, and I forget her name, but she talks about how Venus is our desire, the goddess, and Mars goes out and does these desires. And if you're having a Mars problem, it might actually be a Venus problem because you might not know what you want. And so that idea of Mars being connected to the will and commitment, and the fact that, like you were saying, it's right under Bina, all that goddess energy. And it's also the left side, we believe, is the feminine side.
Yes.
It's so, whereas the right pillar is the masculine pillar in the Kabbalah.
Exactly. And the Hamsa sitting beneath Bina and above Hod, we have it drawing down the power of Bina, the power of that, and sitting on top of, with the foundation of Hod, which is simply humility and surrender. And so if you wish for protection, you can't protect yourself. You are asking, you are beseeching, you are petitioning, you are surrendering to the essence of the divine to protect you. And then you are receiving that from above. So it's sandwiched in between this so beautifully, the number 5 and the Hamsa essence, and across from Chesed, mercy, compassion, love, that's balance. That's what it needs to set boundaries. And Chesed helps us create a world where it is for the greatest good. So it removes that which is not for the greatest good. So these 3 Sephirot work with the Hamsa and the number 5 to help create balance, power of protection from the divine, and balance in the human realm. And also understanding and boundaries and limitations and strength. Understanding and strength is the key to protection.
So why do you think, I know this is a little off the wall or off the top, not off the topic, but I was thinking as you were talking about the image of the Hamsa and how beautiful it is and how many, many versions of it are. And it's probably one of the most popular images through time. And there are other very powerful talismans too, but what is it about, do you think it's because we have hands? Or what is about the image that really speaks to us that even people that don't know anything about its history, that they buy one, they want to use it, they think it's lovely. It's just very popular.
It's such a good question. I feel that it's several reasons. Number 1, the Hamsa is a stylized hand with 2 thumbs. So it creates symmetry, balance. And in a world of, duplicity, and in a world of dichotomy, and in a world of, difference and, polarities, we always are seeking balance. We're always seeking something. And that's, again, the root of protection is the balance of the good and the evil, light and dark. And so we seek that unconsciously, we recognize it. So when you think about the two thumbs and the symmetry of the hand symbol of the Hamsa, you could look at the two pillars in the Priestess Tarot card. And that's an attractive image too to us, because just one pillar feels unusual. Two pillars, oh, we get that subconsciously.
Yes.
We understand that. So for me, it's that symmetry, and it's also the beauty. You know, Hamsas can be very, very simple, like Northern African Hamsas are very, very simple. And we're usually over stylized hands to the point that you didn't even recognize, it looked like a mitten, you know? So they were very over stylized, and just a few little marks on them, like little hash marks. That was it. Usually made in brass, sometimes with a gem as the eye. And they were made like little coins and put on the skirts and the veils and the dresses. They were used as, you know, incredible amulets on clothing.
Oh.
So it's something that appeals to us, that symmetry, that simplicity, the beauty. You know, someone asked me if they have to get a physical Hamlet, Hamsa, like a Hamlet, I'm calling it, an amulet and a Hamsa together. Do they have to get one that they have to hold in their hand, or can it be on paper? And a paper Hamsa is as powerful as a physical metal, stone, clay, glass, resin. It doesn't matter. The only thing I do not recommend are plastic. I have a kind of issue with resin. Like, they're beautiful, absolutely beautiful, but I don't feel the power in them. They're too close to plastic for me. But glass, clay, stone, wood, paper, metal, anything like that is very, very powerful. And again, without the eye, the Hamsa is impotent, in dormant, can never work properly. Even if the eye is just a jewel, you need it. So even if it doesn't look like an eye, it's just a jewel in the place of the eye, that is great. You're always going to want to get a Hamsa with an eye.
Now, my attraction initially was to just the eye, the evil eye, which I still really love the Turkish ones. And I bought one just for decoration, to be honest. And it was years ago, and I put it above my door, and in Venice, and where our business tripled. I mean, it went completely nuts. And that's when I thought, oh, okay, even though Michael and I kind of think we're kind of, you know, who's going to curse us? I mean, we're not really that famous. But we did live in LA, and LA is strange. And there's always just kind of, one of our friends said, there's always kind of dark energy in LA that's impersonal, that you have to kind of cleanse your apartment all the time. So I'll never forget it, though, because it was so noticeable that's when I started getting interested in just the evil eye. And I have quite a few of them, but I like the ones that come from Turkey. They're really beautiful. And there was a fellow that used to sell them on the beach, and it was very reasonable. And I used to give them for presents. And it's
that's wonderful.
So,
but you touched on something that's a really good thing to elaborate on, and that is, who would curse me? And the Hamsa, and I have deep heritage within Judaic roots, so I'll speak from that place. But there is such a thing as in Judaism called the ayin hara, which is the evil eye.
Right.
So ayin is eye, hara is bad or evil. And so it's the ayin hara. And the ayin hara is not someone sitting down and doing black magic against you, although that is included. It's someone who says, oh, you lost weight. Or, oh, your child is so beautiful. That is considered the evil eye, because it catches the attention of negative spirits, people who are jealous, people who are bitter, people who can't help a thought passing through their mind, you know. And a really good example of this is, one time I was walking in a crowd, and there was a little boy in front of me, maybe 5-ish, under 6, 4 or 5. And he turned around and looked at me with such an literally evil look. And you know how kids sometimes get a little cranky? And he turned around and he just, I was waiting for him to stick his tongue out or something, but he just kept scowling at me like really dark. And I thought, that is a very interesting experience. And I immediately invoked the image of the Hamsa in my mind and surrounded myself with it. I made it very large in my mind. I was literally walking in a costume of a Hamsa in my mind.
I love
You know,
that.
yeah, and you can do that with the Hamsa. It's that powerful. And again, facing up for protection. And I could feel his look hitting my heart. Like I could actually feel it.
Mm.
And then his dad just yanked his hand and he turned around.
Mm.
And I thought, did that even actually happen?
Mm.
But I realized even this little child, maybe he was cranky, maybe he heard me talking and didn't like my voice, or who knows. But he gave me a dark look.
Mm.
That's what the Hamsa protects from.
Maybe it's a past life thing too.
It could have been, or to be honest with you, it might not even have been that little boy. It could have been
True.
a whole other thing happening.
Right.
He may have just been the embodiment for a moment. So what did I do? I blessed him.
Wow. Now, when did you start working with the Hamsa?
Oh gosh, I would say I've been working with it at least 30 years. And in my meditations with it, more and more information comes up. Mm. So me understanding and sharing that it's the hand of the goddess, the eye of God, came through meditation. Mm. The Shekhinah showed me, this is the hand, this is my hand of goddess, and this is the eye of God. So when we think of the all-seeing eye, we think of God. You know, that masculine protector, that masculine warrior, that masculine being that protects us. And then when we think of being protected and nurtured and safe, we run to mother's arms.
Right.
You know, so it's symbolic, very, very symbolic. But I also received information of how to work with the Hamsa as, it's hard to explain, but an amulet that you can write on your body. So liquid eyeliner, you can draw the Hamsa, even a crude Hamsa. You don't have to be elaborate. You can do it in henna, do it in liquid eyeliner, and you draw it on your body, and it fades. As it fades, it permeates into you and becomes part of you as a protection. So the key to that is don't scrub it off. Just naturally live your life. Take a bath, take a shower. Wherever it is, it'll fade naturally. That just let it. And I did have the experience with someone who came to me with a spirit attachment. And everything they did, it would not go away. And I looked at it with them, and it was frightening what this was. It was really dark and really malicious. You know, it was not benevolent in any way. And it was causing this person harm. They were suffering health-wise. They had nightmares. So I said, right now, in this minute, do you have any makeup? You know, it was a female. I said, do you have any makeup? They said, yes. I said, pencil or liquid, doesn't matter. You are to draw the Hamsa in the spot where you were having physical issue with it, which was the solar plexus. I said, use a mirror, whatever you need, lay down, draw the Hamsa. Don't worry about what it looks like. In the center of it, put a large circle. That's where the spirit will exit. Oh. And we did prayers, and we did work, and we did ritual, and this thing came out of them. Wow. Through the hole. And then I said, fill in the hole. Close that hole. Wow. And then I said, let that Hamsa naturally wash off your body. And I'm kind of shaking a little bit talking about it, because it was really something to witness that and to see the power of the Hamsa. So I learned that through meditation with it. Anyone can sit with the Hamsa symbol and the Hamsa amulet, and it will share information with you about how to use it. There are so many ways you can put it over your bed, put it under your pillow, put it in your car, on your keychain, on your doors. And just remember that up is protection, down is asking for blessings. And most of them sold today are all facing down. It's very hard to find the Hamsa with the ring and the hole at the top, so you can hang it from the
right.
Very hard. So what you do, there's a workaround, is you hold the Hamsa upright, if that's the way you want to work with it. And you intend with it that that's what you want it to do, no matter which way it's facing. You want it to only work with protection.
Mm-hmm.
So every time the Hamsa is upside down, it's still working protection for you because you asked it to do that.
Right.
And the Hamsa is dormant until you activate it. So it must be activated.
And how do you activate it?
You hold the Hamsa in your palms at the heart in prayer. Even if you don't pray, you just hold it in that position. And you put your intentions and you ask for what you would like with it. I also wash mine in rose water before use, and I pass it through incense, smoke, sage smoke, lavender, roses, something very elevated, something about blessing. So smoke and rose water and intending it, and then it's active.
And do you need to cleanse it sometime?
If you do, you just need to face it down to the earth.
Okay.
That's all you need to do is just hold it down to the earth and ask it to release everything from it, and then you can put it back in the direction that you would like it to be. Technically, I personally feel you don't need to cleanse the Hamsa. It's working with the divine energies. It knows what it's doing. And I've rarely ever, I don't think I've ever actually cleansed one. But if you felt you like with the entity, like if we had used a physical amulet with that entity, I would have instructed her to destroy it.
Right.
Never to be used again. You can't cleanse something like that. That must be absolutely destroyed. So melted in a fire.
Right.
If we use metal, burned in a fire if you use wood, smashed with a hammer, glass and ceramic, ripped to shreds and burned if it were paper.
Right.
Very dramatic.
It is very dramatic.
I
now,
know.
Do you think you could use the Hamsa, like, you know how in I guess you would say the esoteric Western tradition, they use like the pentacle for the directions. Can you also draw the Hamsa in your magic circle in front of you, I assume?
You would want to stand in the center of it. So if you put a Hamsa in front of you, you need to put one behind you, left and right. And that harkens to a Hebrew house blessing prayer that's usually written on the back if you buy one from Israel. And the prayer is called Birkat HaBayit. And the prayer is, let no sadness come through this gate. Let no trouble come to this dwelling. Let no fear come to this door. Let no conflict be in this place. Let this home be filled with the blessing of joy and peace. You can say that while holding and cleansing and activating the Hamsa, like at the beginning. You can say that as your intention for the home. You can also alter it to, instead of gate, dwelling, door, and place and home, you could say body. Let no sadness come to my body. Let no trouble come to my body. Let no fear come to my mind. Let no conflict be in my heart. Let my body be filled with blessings of joy and peace.
Now, can you ask the Hamsa to protect someone you care about?
That's a little bit, you're going into sympathetic magic with that. And yes, technically, but it works best with you. So if someone is not able to do that, like a child, baby, 100% yes. And then when you're connecting the Hamsa and putting the intention you want to place that Hamsa at their heart and your hand over it. So the baby, your hand over it, and then you can work that intention. If this is long distance, visualize as you're holding that the Hamsa is with that person at their heart, and always with permission.
Oh, of
always,
course.
unless it's a baby.
So if you were to give a gift of a Hamsa to someone that maybe knows about Hamsa, will you just explain to them that they need to activate it themselves?
Yes.
Makes sense.
Like even when I sell Hamsas and when I make talismans, I activate them astrologically and with prayer and sacredness in the space, but I give great detailed instruction for what you must do once you receive the talisman. So even when
it doesn't sound like there's really any danger to the Hamsa, only that it could be ineffective if you don't activate it.
Exactly. There is no danger whatsoever. It is the most benevolent amulet I've ever worked with, the most protective symbol I've ever worked with. In fact, about a week ago, I was walking my dog Benito, past one of my neighbors' houses. And I've noticed over the last several years that she's descending into some mental health issues. And so she's not very well. I've only spoken with her a few times. I don't know her very well. As we were walking past, she stood in her doorway and she was kind of like hunkering, holding the door like this. And she was staring like with her shoulders like this. And she was just, I could feel the energy coming towards me. So I said, oh, I have to put a Hamsa on the keys that I walk Benito with. So the next time I went out, I put a Hamsa on it and I, intended it and blessed it and all of that. And as we're walking, this Hamsa is like an inch. So as we're walking, I'm discreetly holding it up as we're walking by. So the eye is facing her house. Right. And even if we turn around, I turn it around so it faces my back and I'm like, moving the Hamsa around. But I have something that I say because she was trying to curse me. She was trying to send terrible energy. So what I do, I never work baneful magic, but I say, all that you have sent to me, I send back to you. Mm-hmm. And I wish you blessings. I'm not here to hurt you because you hurt me.
Right.
I'm not interested in that, but I am interested in sending everything you want on my back, on your back. You get it all returned to sender. And I'm going to throw in some blessings because I want to go to sleep at night and feel really good.
Yeah.
So that's what we do when we walk now until I feel that energy has dissipated.
It's funny what you were saying earlier about how the way people say things can be, I think in the book, there's a great book called Spiritual Cleansing by Dreha Mikaharik. He was this Hungarian magician, and he talks about the minor curse, how that's what we're talking about. And he says that's most likely what you're going to have in your life, but you take it seriously. And there's a lot of like things people say regularly. Like one of the things like, as you get older, oh, you look good for your age.
Exactly.
And I've never liked that. Even when I was younger, I thought, that's not a compliment. It's
right.
like
that
very
is
insidious, and
yes.
And I hate to say this, but maybe I don't hate to say it, but women are pretty good at it. These like, manipulative, and maybe because if I don't have power in a culture, I find ways to have it in a more manipulative way. So I can say maybe it's not their fault, but I have been the brunt of that throughout my life. The one thing about, oh, you've gained weight. I've had someone tell me that twice, and I've never been that heavy. But there was a time, I gained like 10 pounds or something. It's like, and I thought, then the one person kind of backed out and said, oh, but you look good. And I'm like,
this is what's interesting about this is most people think of cursing and hexing as elaborate rituals to cause you great and grand harm. Mm-hmm. That is true. That exists. Many magical practices use that. That is true. But truthfully, I'm more interested in protecting myself from the everyday snarkiness of other people than I am. I mean, my neighbor standing there, sending me terrible dark daggers is unusual. She is suffering from a mental condition that's very unusual. But someone suffering from a mental condition can cause great harm psychically.
That's one of the ways, because my dad has studied spirit attachments. That's one way also spirits can attach to people is through any kind of trauma, actually, even an illness. And according to what he learned, and also a couple books I read on spirit attachment, most people have spirit attachments that have happened, and most of them are maybe not so harmful, but it's a good idea to learn about it so you can release them. It's very, very common, in other words, and they attach in different ways, and one can definitely be through mental illness, I think.
Yes. I think so too. I think mental illness, even mild mental illness, even something like depression, can leave you very vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And so it's important, to help those who can't help themselves be protected. Hamsas too, if you think about curses in the world, like people using their finger gestures to curse, like the middle finger, which is Saturn. Mm-hmm. That's like death and just, like that's like saying death to you, like may all time stop and may you turn to black lead. That's like a really, because that finger, the middle finger is associated with Saturn. So that's a pretty brutal attack, that we take for granted. We give the finger, I mean, since I moved from LA, I haven't given the finger to anyone. I'm not kidding. I used to give the finger constantly in LA because everyone gave the finger while you're driving.
I know.
But moving to Wisconsin, I mean, I wouldn't give anyone here the finger. It would be the most unusual thing in the world to do. But, we think about finger gestures and the power of the hand to send energy. We think about Reiki, writing symbols in the air with your fingers. We think about the mudras that you mentioned. A lot of them are protective and binding. There are binding mudras that protect and bind energy in your asanas. We think about placing hands on each other for healing, for anointing. And so, this kind of goes back to what you asked about. What is it about the hand? We have a history as humans with the hands being healing, protective. Think about a stop sign that has the hands, facing straight up.
That's true.
That's universally understood. If you're walking towards me and we don't speak the same language, and I put my hand up suddenly in front of you, you're going to stop on the dime.
Yeah, that's really true.
And I don't have to say a word. It works the same way with negative energy, dark energy.
Yeah, it's a great little book. The other thing that's humorous in the book is you can give yourself the evil eye through narcissism.
Yes, you can.
I laugh and said, I think I've done that sometimes. But it made me laugh. It's funny in a way, but it's serious that you can really.
Because even through negative speak, Krista.
Yeah, of course.
Even through, speaking poorly about yourself or being, insulting yourself, like, oh, I'm not worthy of that. Oh no, that will never happen for me. Those are minor curses. Those are, passive curses.
I remember in this book by Bruce Lee's daughter, I'm sorry I forgot her name. It's called Be Like Water. It's a fabulous book, and it's a mix of her own memory with her father and then his philosophy. And he was really big on affirmations. And he had these 7 affirmations he read, but they're so beautiful and so different from what, most of us think of as an affirmation. They're really, really good. And I even copied them down, and he that idea that self-talk, and he really believed in that philosophically as well too. So I thought that was really, really cool when I read it. And also, like I said, it kind of opened my mind to what an affirmation can be. It can be something a little more complex and interesting. It doesn't have to be only I love myself, which is fine. But I maybe get a little bored with that after a while. So
Sure. Yes. Well, something you can use the Hamsa for is protect me from my own speech. Protect me from my own unconscious negative thinking. And you can intend that Hamsa for that.
Well, the speech, it gets complicated with communication in my view, because I'm a poet and I'm a writer, and I believe in the power of the full range of communication. And I believe, and I've been the recipient, for instance, I got very good at handling very angry people in the store. And I found probably 80% of the time, if I didn't react, and one time I even asked the woman, why are you so angry? I'd like to help you. And she stopped herself and she said, my best friend died today. I don't even think she knew. And I was like, that's fine. So I said, you go right ahead. And it's more than one time when I've just been neutral. I said, hey, how come you're yelling? And again, you have to be careful because, it can be dangerous when people are angry, but not at all. A lot of times there's actually something to their anger. And so I'm a little mixed about, I believe in talking to yourself in a positive way, definitely. But I know that there's some schools of thought, like in Buddhism, and that this nonviolent communication, I said, yeah, but you need that sometime. You need to be able to say, hey, don't come near me, and stop what you're doing. And we need to feel free to say that and not feel like it's a bad thing. And so it gets really outer communication. What is considered, negative communication is not necessarily negative.
No, and I think what you're talking about is boundary making,
Mhm.
boundary setting, and that is not a curse.
Right.
That is protection.
Right.
That is just protection. But if set a boundary that anyone who crosses it will die, now you're cursing along with a boundary.
Right.
So now you're working with limits and, baneful acts. So, it just depends on what you're like, what you prefer, what people want to do. Like some people want that very strong boundary that, excuse me, harm will come to those who cross.
Mhm.
Like I've met people in my magical path who have openly said, even in a Facebook group or just in their work, like, if you cross me, I will cause you harm.
Yeah, it's kind of in a way it's kind of a form of bullying people.
Oh, yes.
It's sort of, and I don't know if the other thing I learned about curses, and Michael and I, of course, had to learn about curses because people would come to us, am I cursed? And we're like, okay, let's look into this cursing business. Is not very many people are good at it. I mean,
No.
they're not necessarily, and we have met people, like you were saying earlier, that found out they had a whole room dedicated to them. And this usually comes from Middle Eastern cultures, that they were literally being cursed and somebody was hired to curse them. And
Yes.
they found out the extent of it later, so I think some certain cultures that sort of big cursing is like just part of the culture and part of their what they will do, even if you're not necessarily super rich. Maybe you're successful and somewhat rich, or you have some position in society, because that seems to be usually the bigger curses. It's usually against people that have some position of power or wealth or something that other people want to stop or limit.
I think you're right. And I think something to add to that is the people that are hired or the people that practice cursing are the same people who practice healing and blessing. So those cultures recognize, they go from a primitive time all the way to the modern times. But if we think about hoodoo and voodooing, and if we think about, like you mentioned, Middle Eastern cultures, even Judaic cultures, where you're hiring someone to cause harm, and that's very unusual in Judaic culture, actually. But in ancient times, you would do that,
Mm.
and they are also the same practitioners you would go to seek remedy, to seek blessing, because they cultivated the art of working with the energies.
Right.
Now, of course, there were dark magi, dark magicians who didn't practice blessing or healing
Hmm.
and did focus only on that. But usually they were up to their own no good. They
Right.
weren't they were trying to change the world and make it all fall apart. They
Right.
weren't really interested in being hired out. They just wanted to do dark magic and, be on their own, which is good for us.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, it's true that, like, in some of the hoodoo store up in Northern California, they will hex and they will heal, and it seems like it's just part of their religion. It's not
Well,
necessarily they're not separate. You don't get that sense of it being, like you were saying, the dark
right. No,
sorcerer,
it's not.
dark
It's
magician, and
balance.
but it is something that I personally don't seem very comfortable with, and I think it's just the way I was brought up too, though. So I don't have an opinion about if someone else wants to do that, because I think it's all about the reason. There may be a very good reason to hex someone. You might have tried everything else, and maybe they're a very dangerous person.
Correct.
So I'm not really against it per se. It's always good to know what it is, though, and
Hmm.
to understand. And also with magic, it does seem important that you're comfortable with whatever it is you're doing.
Yes. Very much so. And I think I mentioned I don't practice baneful magic, so I'm with you on what you just said. But what I do recognize and understand is when I work with a protection amulet, most especially the Hamsa, I am leaving the hexing to the divine.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't have to ask for anything except, can you help me here? Can you please stand between me and anything that could harm me? And what you decide to do as a divine entity, a divine essence, is all up to you. Because I recognize that while there is, dichotomy and imbalance in this world, and there's polarity, the one thing that isn't in a polarity when it's put together is the divine.
Mm-hmm.
Is the whole of the divine. And so when we separate it out by recognizing masculine or feminine or everything in between, when we're looking at that, we're looking at it from human eyes, from a human earthly perspective. But if we were to elevate and be able to see that as a whole, we would see it encompasses everything.
Right.
Good, the bad, the ugly, the miserable, the joyous, the cursing, the hexing, the blessing, the giving of love and the giving of hate. It would encompass everything. So I would rather leave that. If I'm asking for protection, you take care of that part. All I want is for you to help intervene with me so that I am safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I ask.
That's a good point. We have a question.
Oh,
would
wonderful.
you put yourself at risk by hexing or cursing others? So we were just kind of talking about that. And I will say, I actually went to a poetry workshop led by Anne Waldman. And it was at a Zen monastery. And she asked us to write a curse poem.
Oh.
And I did. And I really like it. I basically was really into the witch hunts at the time, the European witch hunts. So I basically cursed through this poem all of the witch hunters. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of therapeutic, to tell you the truth. So I don't think it had any consequences on me, though. So negatively, well, I don't know why, but it.
You may not always see what happens when you put a finger in the dark ink of that, because as we imagine, karma isn't always happening in this lifetime. Like what you do in this lifetime doesn't have instantaneous karma, mm-hmm. doesn't have instantaneous effect. So to answer the question is, can it cause you harm to hex or curse others? The harm that I think they're referring to is, will I suffer something from doing that? And I'll just speak about it this way. If you put yourself in the mindset of causing another person harm for your benefit, think about that. For you to feel better, another person has to feel terrible. For you to be okay, another person has to be not okay. For you to succeed, another person has to fail. For you to live, someone has to die. For you to be well, someone has to be sick. Someone has to suffer. You've asked for someone to suffer so you can feel better, or you cannot suffer. There's a psychology there that you can't ignore, and that is, I'm asking to sacrifice the well-being of someone else so I feel better. Psychologically, emotionally, physically, whatever the realm is. And I'm not shaking a stick at baneful magic, because I respect all practices. I just know what I will practice, and that is non-baneful magic, because I cannot control the chaos of light and dark. I cannot. There is no way. I can only focus and manage what comes my way. And I can ask for intervention using amulets, using talisman, using spells, prayer, etc. But I cannot control the chaos of that polarity, because it's something that exists outside of my human capabilities. There are some great magical folk who can manipulate that very adeptly. They've spent lifetimes perfecting it. Right. They may still be vulnerable by practicing it.
Well, I think art's different, though. There are powerful pieces of art that would fall into, maybe not directly cursing, that can be catalysts. And maybe if it's art, it's a little different too. And that's my opinion, because there are things I've read, like some of Sylvia Plath's poetry, incredibly powerful. And very, very important on so many levels. She's highly misunderstood, a lot of her work. And so again, it's a tricky thing, because it can end up, without meaning to, people can be repressing things. And because we're very flawed right now, as I think psychologically, we have to have some outlets we can't simply And again, I'm not saying go out and curse people, but I was thinking about the fact that what was really a poetic piece, and it wasn't really about me. It was a response to basically misogyny, and it was kind of a call for justice. So that's my own opinion too, because it just gets tricky with the whole language and communication, because I do feel a lot of people don't have an outlet. You could write a journal and burn it, I suppose. That's one way to do it. And some people, maybe not everyone, need an outlet, that not everyone does. Some people can just work with the mind, I think, directly. So I don't know if that would even really, it's not quite the same as like, oh, I'm going to go out and curse that woman because she stole my boyfriend. I wouldn't do that personally. That's just,
I know.
just not, but there's just these nuances when you get into these topics that I don't have an answer for. It's just the things that I think about.
Well, I think in magic, intention is key. And if you're writing, like Sylvia Plath didn't write, I imagine, her poetry to curse and harm others. She was writing of her own heart and her own suffering and her own pain. That's not cursing. Is she cursing herself? No, not really. She's expressing herself. So expression is different than intention, and intention is key in magic. So I'm going to write a poem which is really a spell that will cause harm to so-and-so. That's a curse, and no judgment, do it or don't, but it is a curse.
Sure.
I'm going to paint a painting with drops of my blood to activate it so that that person is caused harm. That's a curse. No judgment, but it is what it is.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. With the intention where you're directing it at somebody specifically.
Even yourself.
Yeah.
So intention is key. So can harm come to you for causing harm to others? Well, that taps into a whole nother topic of, the art of manifestation and the boomerang effect of energy, and like cures like, and, all of that. So yeah, we have a reverberating effect in the world. And if we put out negative, we are going to get negative in some way back.
Sure. It's just like people that have a certain kind of attitude. Mm-hmm. And we mean consistently. Everybody can have a bad day. But if someone has a certain attitude most of the time, and particularly if they're kind of always flattening things, you say something and they're always flattening it, you don't even want to be around them after a while. So,
but they're just suffering.
Yeah.
There's such I think a whole nother show could be on the nuances of this. How would you? That's why I said I can't navigate the chaos of it. I cannot navigate the nuances, the chaos, the infinitesimal layers of cursing.
Sure.
Because it's beyond my human capacity to manage it all.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. It's very powerful, and magic is very powerful, and that's why we like it.
Yes, we do.
So we're getting close to the end. Did you have any last little nugget you wanted to share with us about working with the Hamsa?
Just trust it. Work with it. Talk to it. Bring it into your life. If it's attractive to you and you feel attracted to it, then it is inviting you. If you're not attracted to it, find another amulet that works for you. There are so many out there. Hamsa happens to be one that really, really, I feel very connected to. But trust it. Meditate with it. Get into a relationship with it so that you can learn from it, and it can work with you, for you.
That's wonderful. Well, what a great conversation. I really learned a lot about the Hamsa from you. I look forward to your book on it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It was such a pleasure.
And thanks for coming on. And you can find her work at Omens. Let's see, where is it? omensandalchemy.com. But it's also on our website, the link to Renee Starr's website too, and you can find all about her work there. So thank you all for tuning in. Join us next time as we continue to explore the esoteric and the obscure together. Have a magical week.